Our celebration service. I'm Ron Barnes, and it's an honor to be your president. This is Thanksgiving week. I think we ought to reflect a little bit on what we need to be thankful for. I think we all live in a land of abundance, and we ought to be thankful that we're here celebrating the fellowship together and the service that we provide our community. And our Rotary Club continues to grow, as you will find out in a few minutes when we have an induction of another member. But it's a wonderful club, and people are understanding that and joining us. Our thought for the day: we are addicted to our thoughts. We cannot change anything if we can't change our thinking. Think about that. And for our reflection today, we have Greer Carson. Greer?
Afternoon, everyone. As some of you know, I am a parent of two, and for reasons too numerous to list, I would describe my oldest as 13 going on 8, and my youngest as 10 going on 40. My wife and I often sum up our experience as parents with phrases like, "It's a trip," or "this parenting gig can be a bit of a buzzkill," probably because our vocabularies aren't up to the challenge. Sometimes we just quote our favorite Morrissey lyrics to each other. Both of our kids are now ardent Smiths fans, and both know more than they probably should about psychedelics. These points may at least give them a cultural edge as they enter adolescence. Recently, my youngest asked me a difficult question. He said, "Dad, are you happy?" I challenged him to define happiness, which shows how much I still have to learn about parenting. He said he's noticed that a lot of people seem unhappy. He also said it's easy for him to feel unhappy and that he doesn't understand why, and he wants to understand it. I told him there's a philosophy chair waiting for him at some future university, but in the meantime, we should work on this question together and see what we can discover. So we scrolled through self-help videos and Facebook threads and Instagram posts and product ads looking for projections of happiness. As you can imagine, there's no shortage of it. Everything is either a path to happiness or evidence of someone's unabashed happiness or a declaration that happiness is the point of our existence. In fact, the centrality of happiness in our culture is so self-evident, so unquestioned, and so completely assumed in our collective thinking and talking that a degree of cognitive dissonance seems like a reasonable state of mind for anyone even half paying attention to the news cycle. I did not share that thought with my son, which shows that I've learned at least something about parenting. So we talked about what we found, and we decided that a great majority of these images of happiness seem to serve as mirrors for the authors. The self-help video presenting a roadmap to happiness, the Facebook post flaunting an awesome night out with friends, the Instagram comments generating a stream of not quite unsolicited praise and approval from followers. In so many cases, it seemed like the authors were really having a conversation with themselves about themselves. "See, I'm truly happy, and you can be too. I have the life I've always wanted, and don't you kind of want the same? I am attractive, witty, and worthy of attention." Or as my son put it, "Go me." So we talked about what we might learn from this and what, if anything, it says about happiness. Because I have a cynical turn of mind and because this apple didn't fall too far from the tree, we decided to seek some outside perspective on the pursuit of happiness. Enter Bertrand Russell. Not a thinker I would recommend to a 10-year-old or to anyone who might be impatient with the anachronistic tinge of 100-year-old rhetoric. But I have found that Russell often hits the mark when it comes to big questions about the human experience. In his book, The Conquest of Happiness, he suggests that too much focus on the self, too much focus on one's own identity, on one's own unique and personal journey can cause chronic and perpetual unhappiness. And he suggests that our modern obsession with the self is a narcissistic rabbit hole that few of us have the strength to even recognize, let alone escape. Instead, he encourages us to focus on the things we do, their inherent value, and the enjoyment we get from doing them, to lose ourselves in the process of whatever it is we're doing. Observe and appreciate the intricacies of each step we take toward completing a project. Focus on the what and how of our existence rather than the who and why. If you paint, lose yourself in the process of painting rather than the idea of being a painter. If you run, Embrace the mental and physical exhilaration rather than the goal of getting or staying fit, or the status of being a fit person that may have inspired you to run in the first place. I thought this sounded a lot like living in the moment or being in the zone. And before I could figure out how to relate this to him, he said, "Oh, that's what Yoda tried to teach Luke in Empire Strikes Back. A Jedi should focus on where they are and what they are doing." It's gratifying to know that I'm not as clueless a parent as I think I am. Then we talked about how difficult it is to focus on the external, particularly for someone growing up on the internet, really for all of us living in the technological age. Through nearly all forms of media and even in common conversation with family and friends, we are bombarded with an emphasis on individuality, originality, authenticity, self-realization, self-actualization, self-care, self-love, self-truth, selfies. I asked him what he thought about Russell's idea of focusing on the what and how rather than on ourselves. He said, "I think he's probably right. I know that when I'm really focused on playing Dark Souls or editing photos on my computer or riding my bike, I always feel good, even when I'm in a bad mood. But when I think about maybe streaming my gameplay or posting my pictures online or trying to show someone how I can ride my bike with no hands, then I feel kind of trapped, like I can't get out of my own head because I keep thinking, am I good enough? Is someone else better than me? Will anyone notice me?" After such a deep conversation with my 10-year-old, I admit that I felt great pride, but I also felt a strong impulse to comfort this kid. So I said, "Look, my love, I don't want you to be unhappy, and this is an important and difficult subject we're just starting to talk about. Let's do something else, anything else, you name it, and we'll put Russell's words into practice and lose ourselves in the experience together." And he said, "Okay, can we watch Empire Strikes Back again?"
Thank you, Greer. To introduce our guest today, Steve Wicks. Steve?
We have lots of guests today. When I call your name, if you could please stand or wave or something. Guests of Sarah Laughlin, we have Hannah Laughlin Armstrong. Jim Bright has several guests: Ann Bright, Courtney Johnson, Ken Keffer, and Jill Bond. Michael Shermis has a guest, Jill Jolliffe. Guest of Liz Feidel, we have Carla Miller. Winston Schindel's guest is Sue Schindel. Guest of Bill Brown, Therese Dureau. Tracy brought a guest, Carol Seaman. And Glenda Murray's guest is Megan McDonald. Have I missed anyone? Okay, Joy, do we have any guests online?
Hey, Steve, and hi, everybody. No guests online, but welcome to the guests that I know in the room and those that I don't. And also to point out that Raj is coming to us from Cape Cod, and Bill and Dick McKeag are in Arizona.
Thank you, Joy. And thank you, Steve. And again, for our guests, if you're interested in joining this wonderful club, see any of the Rotarians at your table. We'd be glad to talk to you about joining our club. We have some birthdays to celebrate. Jeff Richardson, November 30th. Henry Leck on the 24th of November. Bryce Bowe on the 21st. And rumor has it I have a birthday on the 26th of November. We have some anniversaries to the club. We have Chris Kroll, a 5-year member of Rotary, and Tim Riffle, first-year member, so you've been 1 year, and also Michael Shermis, our esteemed co-program chair, 11 years in the club. Have some announcements. We still need help. We need 11 people to help us with the Salvation Army bell ringing, so please see Steve Moberly and sign up. And also, we have 50 people signed up for our holiday party so far. That's on December 7th at the Bloomington Country Club. I hope more people can sign up so we can make it a joyous event and celebrate the holidays together. That's some very sad news. Joyce Pauline's daughter was killed in a car accident on over the weekend. And our hearts and prayers go out to Joyce and John. Visitation is tonight at Allen Funeral Home between 5:30 and 7:30. So I hope some Rotarians can join me to help Joyce and John through this very difficult time. Alex was 47 years old, I believe. We have induction of new members. So if the membership team, Tracy and Aaron, can come forward, I have at least one induction. And I should mention Jill Bond, who was a guest today, will be a new member, and she will be inducted into our club real soon. So Jill, thank you for joining our organization.
All right, you gotta love it. I'm giving hand signals to Dad. Come on up, come on. Anyway, very pleased to have Evan Nix as our latest inductee coming up, and Winston Schindel, aka Dad, will be his sponsor. So if you all could come up right here, and I'll tell you all a little bit about Evan. Evan is currently a psychology researcher and data analyst at the Kinsey Institute, studying methods to measure trauma and physiology. Over the past year, he has spent his free time studying to be a permaculture designer. He is passionate about the ways that our surrounding environments influence and affect our sense of well-being, connectedness, and public, personal, and spiritual health. He received his bachelor's degree in cognitive science from IU, and he enjoys bonfires, playing music with friends, and learning about urban design. He's been traveling over the past few years, but boomeranged back in the hopes of building lasting community relationships with good-hearted people. He believes he will find that here amongst the members of the Bloomington Rotary. And just as a side note, because I had never heard of permaculture design, I thought I would share it with everyone because I thought that was pretty cool. It is a way of looking at the natural world and designing landscapes, cities, and farms in ways that are in harmony with nature. It is an all-inclusive approach to planning and managing land and resources based on the principles of ecology, sustainability, and self-sufficiency. So I suspect we have a program in the near future with this gentleman. Having said that, Aaron, if you would do the honors, please.
Evan Nix. On behalf of the board and membership of the Bloomington Rotary Club, it is a great pleasure to welcome you as the newest member of the club. We look forward to the fellowship that we will share, as well as your participation in the club projects that make our club, community, country, and world a better place. Though Rotary is not a political organization, Rotarians are vitally concerned with good citizenship and the election of effective leaders to public office. While Rotary is not a religious organization, it is built on those highest principles that have served as a moral compass for people throughout the ages. Rotary is an organization of business, professional, and community leaders pledged to uphold the highest ethical and moral standards. Rotarians believe that worldwide fellowship and peace can be achieved when people work together and uphold the Rotary motto of service above self. Rotary activities exemplify the partnership, respect, and generosity that one would expect from people who believe they have a responsibility to help others. You are a representative of your vocation and talents in our club and in our community. You have now become an ambassador of Bloomington Rotary, carrying the ideals of service to all within your sphere of influence. Our community will know and judge Rotary by your character and service. We will also look to you for inspiration as we strive to become better Rotarians. We will now pin you with the distinguished badge of a Rotarian, the Rotary pin. We ask that you wear your Rotary pin with pride in your many endeavors and as a symbol of our recognition of your contribution towards a better world through your Rotary membership. Fellow Rotarians, please rise if you are able and welcome our newest Rotarian, Evan Nix. And now some photos. You got them.
Got him already.
We're done.
Real quick here.
Kodak moment.
Let's get you in there too. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Yeah. Terrific. Thank you very much.
I do have some happy news to share too. We saw on Facebook that Bryce and Tabitha Bowe are now the proud parents of a young baby boy. So, and I'd like to ask who I call Mr. Rotary because he makes the presidency so easy, Jim Bright, to introduce our program today. Mr. Rotary.
When freelance writer Heather Ray and her husband Ken Keffler settled in Bloomington, it felt like home from day one, thanks in large part to their close townie friends. In her new book, 100 Things to Do in Bloomington, Indiana Before You Die, Heather writes, "Nothing says welcome to Bloomington like unloading the U-Haul and heading straight to Mother Bear's to celebrate a birthday." The very next weekend, we found ourselves, Heather said, outside Memorial Stadium, tailgating with the best of them. And the adventures have been nonstop ever since. As a writer and editor for 20 plus years, Heather has shared places to go, things to do, and what to eat for magazines and other outlets, mostly centered on here in the Midwest. And now Heather celebrates a place that she and Ken call their forever home, where they team up to own and operate a local Wild Birds Unlimited nature shop. Through her book, Heather gives travelers and residents a peek into the area's most iconic attractions, as well as lesser known hidden gems. Heather shares insider secrets from longtime residents, and she details must-do adventures for families, newcomers, students, and visitors. And by the way, Bloomington Rotary Club Book Club has selected her book, 100 Things to Do in Bloomington Before You Die, for their next discussion at their January 31st meeting at Judy Schroeder's home. Now, if you happen to be wondering, how can I get a copy of this little gem? The copies are available at a cost of $18, just $18 at the welcome table, and Natalie will be happy to make the arrangements for you. You can pay by cash, by check, or you can have it charged to your quarterly statement. And Heather will, rumor has it that she'll be happy to autograph copies of the book for each and every one of you. So with that, please join me in extending a warm Rotary welcome for a very special person, Heather Ray.
Thank you for having me. After that introduction, I feel like any questions, we could just wrap this up. It was very all-encompassing and wonderful, but truly, thank you for that introduction. Everyone in Bloomington is just so welcoming. My husband and I have only been in Bloomington for 2 years, and we have found that it felt like home from day one, which I just can't say about other cities that I've lived in. Been bouncing around the Midwest for about 20 years, living in cities a handful of years at a time, and it feels very much like I get set into this routine. I'm kind of just living there for the time. I'm going to my job. I'm working through a routine of things and not really getting out to explore the way I would like to have. So every time I've left a city, I've always felt like I should have toured that Capitol building, or I should have gone to the greenhouse more, or I should have explored that city through the lens of a tourist. And so that was one thing I was really hoping to do with this book, is to capture a snapshot of all the amazing things that there are here for people to access if you need to break out of a routine, or if you're new like me. So how did a newcomer like me become the author of 100 Things to Do in Bloomington? Well, I'd say it's a combination of a lot of luck and a lot of side hustles and a lot more luck. Like Jim said, I've been a writer and editor for just over 20 years, and I've worked mostly for magazines in Naples, Florida, Milwaukee, Des Moines, Indianapolis, and now Bloomington. I've been writing food stories for Bloom, so please go check that out. And I've worked almost every editor position possible, from assistant editor to copy editor to web editor to food editor to cookbook editor to the actual editor, and so on. But I've also worked for a lot of editors. It's not a very lucrative career, so often people have multiple jobs. One in particular, while I was working for the Saturday Evening Post in Indianapolis, I was writing on the weekends for a publication called Where Indianapolis, and it was things to do, places to go kind of magazine. And it was run by a woman named Amanda, who I connected with and was writing for that magazine. Now fast forward to 10 years later, after I did a short stint in Milwaukee and a handful of years in Des Moines working as the food editor for Hy-Vee grocery stores. My husband and I have now found ourselves happily in Bloomington to open a Wild Birds Unlimited nature shop. So while I love birds dearly, I really do, when we got here, I was looking for another writing gig. And my husband, who is also a very prolific writer and author, told me about this publisher in St. Louis called Reedy Press, and they do this series of books called 100 Things to Do. So it's a series that they do nationwide in cities across the country. And I thought, oh, maybe I could do the one for Bloomington. We got here, it feels like home. I love this place. We had only been here for like 2 months at the time. So I thought, oh, I'll take a shot. So I put together a proposal. I fired it off to the publisher, and I thought I'll probably never hear back, but at least I got excited about something and tried. But lo and behold, a few days later, I got a call back, and it was from the acquisition editor, and it was Amanda, the editor I was writing for while I lived in Indianapolis 10 years ago. So we luckily reconnected, and at this point now in the conversation, I was trying to actively talk her out of letting me do it, because cold feet set in, imposter syndrome, whatever you call it. And I thought, I don't want to write, there's no way I can do this. I'm way too new. Like, there's too many people that live here and have lived here for a very long time. And I just don't think I'm the right person for it. And she really encouraged me to look at it more through a journalistic approach. It's really not my story to tell, but the community story to tell. So it was more about asking other residents and newcomers, what do they love about Bloomington? What did they grow up doing here? So I got excited about it all over again. And then signed the contract in February 2021, and we opened the doors to the store June 2021. And I just started asking all of our customers. So I apologize if you were one of the early ones where I said, hi, welcome to Birds Unlimited. What's your favorite thing to do in Bloomington? But that really was how I was able to uncover so many amazing things that I just don't think I would have found on my own. So I just started making dozens of lists and lists galore, but everything had to fit nicely into this template because it is a series of books. So each book has 5 categories. There's food and drink, arts and entertainment, sports and recreation, history and culture, and shopping and fashion. So you can imagine there's 100 things in Bloomington for each one of those categories alone. So it became more of a challenge to try and narrow down what to put in each section than anything, while also trying to be mindful of covering seasonal activities and occasional festivals that might only happen once a year. So it became like putting together a puzzle. And the other added challenge to that was not really telling people they're going to be in a book. I've just seen it happen too many times where things get cut at the last minute, especially in a list format like this. Things might get replaced or rewritten. So I was trying to do everything kind of on the down low. which meant I couldn't experience any special treatment, which was unfortunate, but so I was paying for everything that we did, but that's fine because there were so many things here that are actually free and open to the public. Lilly Library and the Art Museum on campus are two wonderful examples of that. But if you're curious about some other highlights in the book, I'll just run through a few of my favorites in the section and then open it up to questions. So for food, everything on 4th Street like blew my mind that you can have access to food from around the world here. That is really cool. My favorite is Little Tibet. I don't know where else you can find Tibetan food in the Midwest. I've never come across it before. So I highly recommend checking that place out. Also Piccoli Dolce. This was the unfortunate thing at the time I was finishing the book. They hadn't quite opened up a market cafe yet, but now they have one open and it's all authentic Italian food. That's really wonderful, but they're only open from 10 to 2 Thursday through Sunday, I believe, and also at the farmer's market. But that is, if you like Italian food, very much worth checking out. For sports and recreation, now this was a hard one for Bloomington to narrow down. I know we're in basketball country and I know tailgating for football games and other events is a big deal here. But my personal favorite was really all the hiking options. And that was hard to narrow down some of our favorite nature spots. One I was just chatting about is the Amy Weingartner Brannigan Peninsula Preserve Trail, where you have lake views on either side. It's about a mile out, a mile back. It's one of the Sycamore Land Trust properties, one of many beautiful properties to discover in Bloomington. So that was one of my personal favorites. For entertainment, all these sections were hard to fill. I mean, hard to narrow down for things. There's so much, from seeing an opera on campus to going to a drive-in. I think there's fewer than 300 drive-ins in the country, and we have one in our backyard, which is really cool. But I love to laugh. I'm a nervous person in general, so the Comedy Attic is good for me. That's here. We love to go there and just spend an evening laughing. For art, I think a really great way to experience the art scene in Bloomington is through the First Friday gallery walks. It's a mile stretch of galleries. You can go in and out of them. Usually between 5 and 8, the galleries will have receptions. It's the first Friday of every month. And our favorite is Juniper Gallery. The owner, Jamie Sweeney, she has a little bar in there. So they serve wine and beer and tea and coffee. And they also serve Italian food from Piccoli Dolce. They have live music. So it's a great little space to hang out that I think really captures Bloomington. For shopping, you'll find me on the square probably this weekend during the Canopy of Lights. While I was writing the book, actually, the first time I went downtown on the square, I was popping in and out of shops and thought, oh, there's so many cute, wonderful things here. So when I started writing the book, I did full entries for places like Global Gifts, Gather, Goods for Cooks, Jail Waters, and then I realized this whole section is just going to be the square. So I ended up, and I didn't do it justice, but I put all of the square shops into one entry as like a destination for shopping, and then tried to branch out. And I found a few interesting places that happen to be my favorites now. One of them is my sister's closet, where you can shop, ladies, for, oh, wait, we have some fans. I love to go in there and help. You can shop and support people. It's like win-win. And then the other place was a gallery shop called Not Just Rugs, where you can find really cool Native American art and jewelry. And the owners, Chuck and Andrea, usually one of them is in there, and they can really explain to you what the designs on some of the Navajo rugs mean. They all kind of carry their own meaning. So I thought that was a really cool place to check out. So those are just a few of my highlights. I did just want to wrap up by sharing a couple things I've learned about Bloomington. I'd be very interested to hear if you share the same sentiment, or if things have always been this way, or maybe they've changed into this recently. But I found that there's a very powerful synergy among the small businesses here. It feels like everyone kind of wants to work together and help each other, even if there is, technically they should be competitors. And I think a great example of that Jamie was reminding me of is the First Friday gallery walk, where these galleries are now working together to help each other to bring more foot traffic rather than competing for art dollars. And I thought that was a really cool glimpse into how businesses here work and operate. And I also felt like the campus and the community were very well integrated here. And I had lived in a few other college towns, and it always felt like students are on campus and residents are in the community, and there wasn't a lot of crossover. But I feel like people are coming to campus. We're, here on campus now for this meeting. I just feel like there's so many reasons to explore campus. There's a lot of things that are open to the public, some really cool, fun things to do. There's a whole itinerary in the book on things you can do on campus. And I felt like it's a big part of this community. I just haven't seen that in other college towns. So I thought that was really cool. So that kind of wraps up my talk. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, or if anyone has favorite things they love about Bloomington.
Hello. Yeah.
Hi.
I wanted to ask you if there were any entries that you felt you kind of uncovered or hope to popularize in the book, say like a hidden gem of any kind?
That's a great question. I found this to be a hidden gem. I don't know if other people would feel this way, but there's a place called the Bloomington Community Orchard that is open to the public to harvest fruit. Anyone can go and pick fruit from the trees or harvest vegetables. And I don't know if this is like a popular place for people to go, but I sure hope that it is. And a place to volunteer. You can go learn how to maintain an orchard by volunteering. I think they do like work weekends or something where you can go and learn the ropes, which I think is very cool here.
Any questions online? Joy.
None at the moment. Tracy, I'll keep my eyes open.
All right.
Tell us about your interest in birds.
Well, that started in 2020, actually, when I started working from home. And so I was on my laptop on the couch, and I started paying attention to the birds at our feeder. My husband has always been into birds, and he worked at the Wild Birds Unlimited when we lived in Milwaukee and when we lived in Des Moines too. So he was always trying to teach me, and I was always like, but when I started working from home, I found it to be very therapeutic to watch the birds and learn their behavior. And I started learning all of their names. Now I can tell you what to feed them. I'm a certified bird feeding specialist. And so I think birds are kind of a gateway to nature. Ken is always saying, like, they're everywhere. It's so accessible to go out and just see what's around you. So I just think that's really cool about them.
Bear with me. I'm going over to Mr. Bray.
Uh-oh.
But I will just echo that my sister's closet, we have some specialness there too. So thanks for that plug.
Nice.
Yeah, Heather, how are sales, number one? What kind of feedback are you getting? And three, if you could be a fly on the wall at the Bloomington Rotary Club's book club meeting, what kind of comments would you like to hear?
Oh, I'd like to hear good things, of course. Sales are going okay. This is my first book. I don't really have any way of gauging, what is normal for this. And it just came out in September. So we had a few book events so far. Things have been going well. I'm happy, just to have it out and about, I'm not the best marketing person. So I think often with these types of books, you really got to get out there and sell it. And I'm not great at that. So I do appreciate events like this where I can come talk about it. And then, I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question? It was... Oh, I like hearing if somebody learned something new, and also maybe something that wasn't in there that they felt like should have been. It's come up a couple of times. Like, I can give you an example, the IU Arboretum, a beautiful place to go have a picnic, learn about trees. That wasn't in the book, and someone reminded me of that. But that's how I learn. And I think, I don't think there will be a second edition, but if there ever was, it's nice to kind of have those notes and that kind of feedback.
I have a question that relates to what you just said. What happened to the things that didn't make the book? Is there a list somewhere that you would just love to stick in the back of the book?
Yeah, there's a Word document on my computer of all of the things that I wrote that just they didn't fit, or they were rewritten to be something else, and that I have been just keeping track of things that I've learned about that weren't in there, just so I can learn about them myself and help answer the questions like this in the future. But right now they are literally just a list.
In terms of the book, who is your audience? Are you looking to sell it to people who are coming to Bloomington to visit? Do you think locals would benefit from it? Or are these things, we all know most of what you're talking about. I'm just curious who your target audience is.
Yeah, I struggled with that, actually, trying to come up with that in my head. I think a lot of it is newcomers, but also people like, especially during the holidays, and you have family and friends in town and you're thinking, I'm not sure what to do with them. I know the things I like to do, but maybe here's a book they could look through and find things that they like as well. And I also think, just helping people break out of their routine. There might be people here that have lived here a long time, but maybe they never go downtown or to the east side or west side or whatever it is. So it's just a way to keep people inspired on the different things that there are to do here.
Heather, before I hand over to Tim, just a quick question. Have you looked to follow up on that? Have you looked at Visit with Bloomington to do anything with them?
I initially did connect with them early on to help with content, but I have not connected with them about sales specifically yet.
I haven't read your book, so I don't know, but I wondered if you included the Tibetan Mongolian Buddhist Center, which is such a spiritual center, and any of the other spiritual sites around this town.
Yes, I did include that one. My husband and I went out there and hiked the nature trail there, and I accidentally went the wrong way around one of the landmarks there. But it is a beautiful place. That was included in the book. I think that's a really cool connection too to the Little Tibet and having that restaurant here. So I was happy to find that here.
Yeah, we moved to Bloomington in 1964, and it was a shopping desert. And so it's changed dramatically since then. And one reason is that women started running businesses, and it wasn't easy, but there are a lot of the things that you mentioned were started by women, and they finally got going, and that made a difference. So now it's not a desert anymore, it's a jungle.
Yes. Thank you, ladies.
A tame jungle, right?
I had an idea. Because of the time of year and because I have family that's coming over Christmas, New Year's, I think it would be nice not to have a book, but to have a column that would appear someplace. These are things you can do when everything is closed down.
Yeah.
And these are things you can do if you have a grandparent who isn't going to hike the trails with you anymore.
Sure. Yes. Yes. That's a great, are you listening to that over there?
I'd like a little more information about what you actually put in the book, the names of owners. Is there a map of all these locations, directions on how to get to some of them? Because you named a couple that I'm not familiar with.
Oh, well, okay. There is contact information in each entry. There's an address and a website or whatever the business has available to give more information about that. That's available. There aren't maps, but there are also suggested itineraries in the back of the book of things that you can do with families or things you can do on campus and then also by season. So there's things you can do in the fall, spring, summer, etc. So it's kind of mapped out that way.
So to me, at least, you have some very interesting perspective. Could you share where you grew up and where you developed these perspectives?
Sure. Originally, I was born in St. Cloud, Minnesota. My family moved to Naples, Florida when I was 8. So I spent my childhood growing up in Florida. I went to Florida State for a year, transferred to Purdue. Then I went back to Florida. Then I moved to England. I lived in Bristol for 6 months after college and came back and lived in Florida again and then Indianapolis. And then after working for the Saturday Evening Post in Indianapolis, I moved to Milwaukee and worked for Reader's Digest. They had the Taste of Home publication. So I worked there. And then a job brought me to Des Moines, Iowa. So I was in Des Moines for five years and then Ken and I decided we got to figure out where we're going to stay, stop moving. And that's how we landed in Bloomington. So I'm working for different publications in all of those areas, I think is what helps shape some of that perspective on things.
I'm interested in your process, like in terms of like the natural areas versus like the commercial and the man-made things. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Can you give me an example of?
Well, you know, I think about like, okay, natural areas, you know, you're looking at something that nature created, right? Versus, you know, the square or commercial areas and things like that humans have created.
Sure.
Did you think about the sort of those two things that work together, obviously, but I'm just wondering about sort of how you conceptualize sort of the process of the selection.
Sure. Yeah. I did try to balance a good part of the book with nature, being able to explore different nature trails, but many of those are, you know, as you know, man-made, or so I did try to just include a little bit of the history. So Griffey Lake is in there, but you know, it was started to be our water source, I think in 1924. So I tried to include some historical background on some of those natural places, but it was important to me to include that balance as well. So it's not just going out and playing laser tag. You know, there are so many beautiful areas here to get out and explore. I wish I could have talked more about the geology. That is something I do kind of regret. I think that's a big part of Bloomington. It's not something I know very much about. The closest entry would be where you can go dig for fossils and actually keep the fossils at Lake Monroe. They have a fossil dig that you can go learn about what's in there without collecting fossils where you're not supposed to collect fossils. So.
Hi, I'm curious how you defined Bloomington, how far out of the city you would go, because some of the things you're describing are outside of the proper city limits. Did you keep it to Monroe County? Did you include, you know, maybe the edges of Brown County? Where was the limit for you with
Yeah,
this?
that's a great question. And that came up with the publisher too, because they want the majority to be obviously in Bloomington, but they do want a percentage of it to be almost like day trips that you could take. So Spring Mills is in the book, Brown County is in the book. I really kind of tried to keep it to 75% of what's in Bloomington, but then including some of those things that are just a day's drive. One example I can think of is the Outdoor Trails Museum in Salisbury. It's a trail where you can hike, I think it's 3 miles, and there's sculptures from 150 artists from around the world just along the trail. So it's a really cool way to experience art and nature together in the same place, but technically not in Bloomington. But I did try to keep most of the book in Bloomington. It's a great question.
I'm curious, you have mentioned the things you like in Bloomington, you've discovered. What brought you to Bloomington in the first place?
Yes. Yeah. This is the 3rd time I've moved to Indiana. So I know. Mostly Ken and I, when we were in Des Moines, we were going through COVID times. We were taking lots of walks together and we were trying to discuss like, what is our next step? What's our next chapter? Can we afford to open a Wild Birds Unlimited? That was kind of the dream that we'd sort of been talking about for a long time. And so we just finally decided, like, let's just take the first step. And so we went down that process of how do we open up a Wild Birds Unlimited? And when we got to the part where it was like, what markets would support a store, a nature shop like this, Bloomington came up. But it wasn't the first one that came up. We talked about a couple places in North Carolina, but they didn't sit right. You know, how you just have that feeling when you know. And so when Bloomington came up, we both kind of, it clicked. Like we thought, oh, what a great place. I've lived in Indiana twice before. My best friend grew up here. She moved back here, so she's here. So it just felt like we already had some built-in connections here in Indiana. So that's kind of what brought us here, was to open the nature store. And we knew it was a great nature scene here in Bloomington, but we had no idea it was this great. So we were very happy with that.
This was a major effort on your part, obviously. A lot of research was involved. I'm anxious to see your book. I just wonder how long this effort took you to research and publish.
It took a full year from February to February. And majority of that was just going out and doing all of the things and trying to narrow down what's going to be in the book. But yeah, I initially thought, oh, I've been writing for a long time. I can crank this out in a few months, maybe in a few weeks. And once I got started, I was like, whoa, I'm glad I gave myself a full year because I don't know who I thought I was.
That's a great follow on to lead into my question, which is, I'm also new to Bloomington and I would consider myself an aggressive settler in, but it can be exhausting. And so since you were doing all this in-person research, going to these places, spending your money there, I'm sure that occupied a lot of your time. What does life look like for you now that the book is complete? What are you looking forward to? How are you experiencing Bloomington differently now that you're not running from venue to venue?
Yes. Oh, I know. That's a great question. Something always seems to come up and fill my time again. I thought once I submitted the book, it would be like but I've started writing for Bloom magazine. And so now that's pushed me back out to get back out there and start researching and writing. I'm working on 2 stories now for their February issue, things that I may not have come up with and pitched. So that's still keeping me going in the community. That's spending some of my time. And as small business owners, Ken and I, we're not making any money. So I have another part-time job too that also I fill my time with writing. It's a cooking subscription kit for kids. So I write for them on the side and love it.
I'm a big fan of cranes, so I was really excited to see about your crane program and I signed up. And I'm
Oh, good.
wondering, what other programming do you have in store for the year?
So the crane event that you're referring to will be at Wild Birds Unlimited. The International Crane Foundation is going to come talk about how cranes have been influential in arts over time. So that is kind of a new take on it. I think we're really looking forward to that event. That's December 3rd. Then in January, we'll have Jill Vance from Lake Monroe, the naturalist there. She's going to come and do a presentation about the eagles over Lake Monroe. I think that will be geared more toward families and kids. And Ken, do we have anything else coming up? We try to do at least one event like that every month, but we'd like to actually amp that up a little bit more in the future.
On that note, Ken, I'd be asking you to do a shameless plug. Where is your store?
So Wild Birds Unlimited is you got Eastside Kroger, Hobby Lobby. We're right next to the Hobby Lobby. So 1301 South College Mall Road.
Any questions online, Joy?
No questions other than Jeff asking, you did mention Griffey Lake, correct, Heather, as being included?
Yes. Yes.
That's a gem minutes away. So yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the beautiful things is you can be downtown and you can be in nature within just a couple miles of each other. I think that is what's so special about the nature scene here in Bloomington. And even some of the parks like Lower Cascades, just a couple miles from downtown, you can kind of get lost very quickly in nature here. Just, it's just so integrated with the downtown community. I think it's really awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's really great hearing about the town we love from somebody who's been around and moved to other places. I mean, Des Moines. Okay. All right. Anyway. Heather, in honor of your presentation today, we will be making a donation to Big Brothers and Big Sisters. We appreciate your presentation today. I want to put out some acknowledgements for people who made today's meeting work. Obviously, Steve Wicks, who had both task of being greeter and introduction. Joy Harder, our Zoom host. Greer Carson. I've learned more about parenting today than I did when I was a parent. Thank you, Greer. Aaron Brewington, who will be our reporter, and obviously the camera and mic operator, Tracy Yanovich, and then Tyler Martin Nichols for his great job of producing this. And he has some new toys to play with today. If you're interested, stop by and he'll show you the new toys that he has. At this point, please, if you'll stand and join me in the four-way test. Four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First, is it truth? Second, it's going to all concern. Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, beneficial to all concerned. And fifth, is it fun? Have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody.